Hey everyone, I'm Marcus Grimm for Medtrics, and I am so excited about today's guest. Today's guest is Mike Crook, who heads up UX and UI for Medtrics. And listen, as you guys know, anyone who's listened to any of videos that I do with Tosh, Medtrics has been very upfront about its use of AI, both under the hood and in shaping the product. And so what we're going to be doing, this is a little bit of a new series of videos we're going to be doing, is we're actually going to be showing you what it looks like when your company is truly an AI first company. And when I say AI first, I truly mean AI first. If you have the opportunity to hear Tosh speak, he says we're using AI a lot, but I mean, this is a company that you really got to be embracing AI and plowing forward. And one of the things Mike and I will be talking about today is it doesn't mean you're plowing forward blindly. If you ever watch Mike and Tosh and anyone at Medtrics go through AI, it's not taking what you get from the AI as truth, and this is the way we're going to go, but it's using a tool to scale faster and get smarter as we move on. We're using it for curriculum mapping, we use it for content generation, content refinement. But we're going to move into Mike's world, which is UX and UI, to understand how the different tools are shaping what Mike's doing. Mike, let's just kind of set a stage for the team here. It seems like this AI thing, sometimes I feel like it's been 2 weeks and sometimes I feel like it's been several years. But let's go back to the pre-GPT world. What did UX, UI look like for you at Medtrics before that all happened?
UX before AI was a bit of a methodical and time-consuming process. It involved research at some level, interacting with our clients, whether that be through like an onboarding, discovery call, and we would sort of dive into their pain points and really try to understand what their specific problems were and solve that through our platform. And then from there, it would often go to a program I used, which was called Figma, which was a vector program that really dealt with graphics and how like the UI actually looked. Not so much how it worked and behaved. It was more about like, okay, where are we going to put this button? How's this modal going to show up? What is this going to look like? It's more of a visual tool. It would require a lot of layout.
It's so funny to have a conversation with somebody like yourself because you're already diving into some of the limitations of Figma, but it wasn't that many years ago that Figma was the hot new guy on the market, right?
That's true.
When did you start using Figma and what did it bring you that your previous workflow didn't have?
Well, there were a bunch of tools that actually came out just previous to Figma. And Figma kind of was the cream of the crop and rose to the top. I started messing around with it when I was a grad student at Jefferson University. And towards the end, it really became the go-to platform. Figma very much was the way to express what a layout or like a user flow, user journey would look like. And like I said, it's a vector tool, so it scaled things up very well. You could use different tools to sort of point out what you wanted to sort of focus in on. And you would do like a series of screens and you would move along and talk about the different screens and present them and sort of annotate them, mark them up, really go through like a whole explanation. And then on the other side, there was a whole level of interpretation that went on when doing a presentation with like Figma.
So Figma brought a lot of those aesthetics, but my understanding is what Figma isn't great for necessarily is rapid iteration, rapid prototyping. So is that kind of where this new generation of tools has helped you to say, hey, listen, this is great, but we often talk about in the startup world, we're trying to move really fast. What was the reason for you looking to go beyond Figma?
The ability to rapidly iterate. There was no such thing with Figma. You would often run through cycles of feedback. So you would take something, put it in front of the team, and the team would, give its feedback and break it down even further. Then that would cause you to go back into a design iteration, make all those improvements and changes that we felt were applicable over and over and over to the point where, there was maybe less and less feedback, and therefore the team was on the same page with the design.
They stopped beating you up about the design. So you were like, okay, no more comments, meaning I can ship this now.
Some points you were like, this is great. I love feedback, but you wanted to get things into production and move it into development and have it become, especially if there was a client, because a lot of times at Medtrics, we are constantly trying to improve the platform. So we onboard new clients and they come on board usually with a set of like pain points, and we're really trying to address some of those things. So we don't want it to take too long to get those things up and running. Feedback's great, but it does lengthen the process of getting those things to materialize and become real life solutions on the platform.
Terrific. So when we talk about what UX UI looks like today with AI assistance, we talked about Figma and what you previously were doing. I know you've been using a whole new set of tools over the past 6 months or a year. What are you using these days?
So these days, it's a combination of Lovable and Cursor. Cursor sort of lends itself to get a little bit closer to what development or developers do, because you prompt and it will basically give you very usable code on the other end. Lovable is a very good tool for just what they call prompting, which is just using natural language to describe what it is that you want. So you might ask for a certain layout, like, I'm looking for a dashboard that has these features. Give me this. Lovable is more UX driven in the fact that you can get something quicker. It might not be usable code in the end, but it's definitely something that you can take as a working prototype, put that in front of a team, and then rapidly iterate off of that with more prompting. As opposed to Figma, I would have to go in and edit the pixels, move the mouse. Now I just speak to the AI and I'm able to iterate and tell it, no, we decided we wanted to do this instead. And it will basically make those changes on the fly and generate a layout.
From a workflow perspective, you started with Lovable to sort of get those design concepts faster and then move on to Cursor for when you're trying to prepare the code to give development. Am I saying that properly?
Yeah, it's a combination. Yeah, I would say that that's pretty accurate. I'd say Lovable's the go-to if you're like almost at the stage where it's blank canvas and you're looking, where am I going to put this paintbrush and how am I going to start, the process. Lovable's a great jumping off point because you can really get those ideas out quick, because sometimes that's half of the battle, is sort of just getting the things out of your brain and into a situation where, you're getting the idea to come to life.
I can still recall my first experience with it with ChatGPT a couple years ago. There was almost a light bulb moment for me in that, okay, this is going to be very, very different and it's going to help me a lot. But then also within about 40 minutes, I was like, okay, and there's also stuff going on here that just flat out isn't accurate. Wait, what do you recall about those first couple weeks with Lovable? Did you go into it skeptical? Were you blown away right away? What did you think?
I went into it pretty skeptical. Our CEO, Tosh, is very open and he's very much a promoter of AI and very transparent about that and how we use AI to improve upon what we have. But I would say I was a skeptic at first, because when you get used to certain tools, you really don't want to change and come off of those tools. But when I started to realize the speed at which, we could accelerate these designs and get working prototypes out quicker, that's when I became a believer. But there are some pitfalls, or, you can overdo it with prompting and, you need to do it in bits and pieces at times. It's like a junior collaborator, somebody who's a junior UX designer. You don't want to overwhelm them with a bunch of, requests and put stuff right on their table and say, here, get all this done. There's a way to go about it to kind of fine tune and refine and get exactly what you want. It's also good to have a good lexicon when it comes to design, because it does understand, the difference between a drop down or a collapsible, different features that, you can ask it to produce and it'll do just that. So I have some idea of what I want ahead of time. So I've made a couple steps in my mind ahead of time before I actually asked the AI to generate the layout. But I would say, there are situations where you can overdo it and ask too much all at once and you get very mixed results.
So advice from a prompting perspective is, and that's certainly stuff that I've learned on the content side as well. Sometimes you feel like, if I give it all the information, I'll get everything back. And I've kind of learned over time that the goal here really isn't to give everything to get everything back. It's to quickly go from step to step to step. Is that what you do in design as well?
Exactly. And sometimes you'll get to a point where you realize, oh man, this is a mess. I need to start undoing what I did. And that could be fun. That I'd say is not a pitfall, but there's something to be desired. Sometimes to reverse course and go in another direction. So you got to watch how far you go down the road only to have to turn around and maybe do something different. That comes with experience to kind of know when to sort of switch it up and make your pivot ahead.
Can you share your screen and show us something in Lovable?
Sure. So the screen that, you would start out with is basically their dashboard. We've got designs here, a bunch of them that we've done, that we've generated. If we were to start a new one, I would just go in here and say, give me a dashboard with an activity feed and stats for a medical school student. So on the left-hand side, we have this area that is where you're doing the prompting and having the conversation. And then it's basically coming back and saying, yes, I understand these are the things I'm going to do. And then you keep iterating on those prompts and constantly telling the AI agent exactly what it is that you want to design. So this is like what would be an example of a block schedule where you have different faculty members. It could be a chief resident, medical schools students. There's a list of different roles. They're in different places doing different things. The idea is that your scheduler, you want to make it where they can get all the relevant information at a glance. I've got 5 different views. I've got a block, a weekly, a daily. I got a timeline and a rotation view, and they're all dynamic. Everything has something on it where we could click and see the different PTO requests that are coming through. We could see somebody wants to swap a rotation. There's violations on work hours. So we've got a lot of things to interact with. This is something that took a while to produce in Lovable. Getting this UI exactly where I wanted it took a lot of iterating, but I could only imagine if I was just using Figma and doing this.
I think what's really interesting here is to the average person just watching this video, it looks like I'm using the Medtrics app, but in reality, you're just showing me a wireframe design tool, if you will, or you may not even call these wireframes because they're so far beyond that.
Yeah, it's basically a working prototype. Like a wireframe is typically static and it's just one layer deep and it's not clickable. I mean, there are some tools to kind of make that happen within Figma, but you got to jump through a lot of hoops where you just tell the AI, what you want to do on the screen, and it'll start implementing that.
I'm curious, over on the Chat GPT side, obviously we can preload things, our brand standards or rules, if you will. Does Lovable work the same way? Is there a certain group of Medtrics data that you've got preloaded in here that it knows, hey, this is kind of what Mike's looking for? Or is this giving me a clean slate right now?
You can give it a UI kit ahead of time, so we could have a very branded experience. So we do have a UI kit. Sometimes you get not mixed results, but it just sort of hems you in a little bit more about kind of like, the design. So usually what I'll do is I'll wait, and then sometimes I'll apply a UI kit to it later. But there is a language of, these are the kind of components we want to use. These are what these components look like. And, when you tell it, you want a certain thing, it's going to materialize it, but it's going to make sure it fits within your UI kit. It's going to look like a certain specific way.
That's a really interesting point. Talk to me about why that is, why you would maybe have a preference for going in with a clean slate whiteboard and then layering in the standards. I don't typically do that on the content creation side, and maybe I should. I'm just curious how you arrive at that.
I think there's just certain constraints. A UI kit constrains. It's by nature. It's saying, make sure you do it in such a way. And I just want to prevent it in the very beginning from thinking about anything other than getting to the solution that I'm trying to work toward. So don't worry about, making it look a certain way. Let's just have it operate and solve this particular problem.
I've come to believe that a lot of the mistakes people make with ChatGPT are they're trying to use it to move 99% faster. And the way I kind of describe it is, I'm trying to move 70% faster, but the quality's better. What's your experience been from a design perspective?
I would say from a design perspective, because there's so much more that you can do and get out of using an AI agent, the complexity, especially if you have like a platform like Medtrics, is a very complex platform. So when you're solving problems for that, you're solving for maybe 10 different users. So there's always going to be a lot of iteration, even within using the AI agent like Lovable or Cursor. you're still going to do it might end up being hours, but you're going to spend those hours and you're not going to spend weeks.
Yes.
I never really thought about the percentage. I would say it's got to be like 60% at least that it cuts in half, more than in half, the time it takes to bring something ready, to production and get, sort of spec it out and give it to a developer and have them work on it on their end. That process would be, taking this working prototype and putting in front of the eyes of like a client that maybe had understand how something worked. And we saw an opportunity to make a good, fix in a certain situation. Maybe again, it's coming from onboarding and it's a specific pain point. It really just depends on what we're trying to solve and what we're trying to do. But we'll take that and make it a lot quicker to get it in front of our team. We'll go through it as a product team and then move that over to development eventually. The iteration is cut down. And I think there's just a higher level of collaboration, a higher level of understanding. There's more clarity with using a working prototype.
Medtrics is, and we talk about Tosh a lot, extremely involved with the product, very, very connected to the product. In many ways, you are trying to sort of translate Tosh's ideas into design. It would seem to me that by you giving him these more dynamic designs, it's probably easier for you guys to figure out, are we on the same page or are we not on the same page? How's it changed your collaboration with Tosh?
Yeah, so with Tosh, I mean, and like I was saying earlier, he's a very big proponent of AI, especially in our market where, we really need to solve a lot of different problems, that are out there. The industry is rife with just, obstacles on, having clarity and having a platform that sort of does a lot of different things well. And I think with him and I, it is really about getting on the same page quicker, because I can, pull up a working prototype and start to explain it. Whereas I might have got away with a gap before in my conversation with a Figma flat, more two-dimensional, because I didn't explain how I got to A to B as well as I maybe should have. And it just got lost in translation. So with a working prototype, those gaps are filled in a lot better, and therefore there's a lot more clarity, and you get more direct feedback of whether something's really working for that particular problem or not.
The last couple of questions I want to ask you about are the use, and you mentioned that you're just getting more into using Cursor more and more. We just talked about a gap of perception between you and Tosh, but as long as I've been involved in digital products, there's often a gap between design and development, right? It's you make these beautiful pixel perfect things that look incredible, and then when it ships, you're like, that's not what I had in mind at all. It sounds like that's kind of what Cursor's trying to do, right? It's trying to bridge that gap.
Yeah, I mean, Cursor leans more towards developer tool. It will produce very usable code. There's a term called vibe coding, and you can get away with vibe coding. So what we normally do is, we'll take that code and we'll analyze it and make sure there's no fluff or there's no parts of it that really shouldn't be in there. But it's very much, usable code. And it does bring design and development together in the fact that, it's got to be kind of frustrating for a developer to be handed like a really nice UI. And maybe you're asking way too many things all at once. We kind of want that to kind of go through fast and end up a part of our product. But it's a big ask. And we don't think twice about, putting something in front of a developer and saying, hey, make this happen. But now we can not only provide the design, we can provide the usable code on the other end. And then that developer can either say, well, this code is perfect for what I want to do. Let me, take this and implement it. Or, this needs improvement. Let me take what the AI has given me and build upon this. But it's not just handing them a piece of paper, in essence, a nice picture, and sort of saying, hey, run with this, make this real. It's bringing it one step closer. It's not just an idea. It's an idea with like a working prototype and usable code.
You're not a Medtrics front end developer, so I don't want you to I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's a learning process too, right? Because in the old days, you would give them designs and you would say, make this happen. Now you're trying to make their life faster, but you're providing them with code. So there's an expectation there, right? That they need to realize you're not trying to give them 100% of the code. Once again, you're just trying to give them a very strong jumping off point. What have those interactions been like?
Yeah. So I think in the end, when it comes down to it, it definitely gives a jumping off point for developers. And I'm sure there's a level of collaboration there that is going to shine forth, more and more as we go along. I mean, we're still early in this process of using AI agents, to code. I'm seeing it bridging those gaps and any kind of misalignment or misunderstanding about what it is that we're asking for in a design, especially when we're, able to, give some lovable working code in the end.
My final question for you is this learning curve that we're all on right now with AI. I don't think any of us know where it's going to end, but what are the things that you're particularly hopeful for over the next year or two from a UX UI perspective?
Yeah, so we talk a lot about adaptive experiences. So an AI that will actually act dynamically based on, what a user is doing in the system and provide an experience or a solution to them on the fly in the thick of it, when they're trying to get something done. So it'll speak to their actual workflow that they're working on. So the AI agent would actually provide them with, a shortcut or something that's going to really help them get whatever it is that they need to get done sooner. More adaptive, dynamic, adjusting platform to the user and their specific needs.
My gut tells me that if I would have asked you 5 years ago where you want the platform to go, you probably would have said the same thing. But the difference is that with this technology, it's coming, right?
It's attainable. Yeah, exactly. Where before you felt like you were looking for the unicorn in the clouds and, thinking pie in the sky. Now it's very much within reality. And, we often talk about humanizing interfaces and making things, feel more like human behavior and more aligned to how human would act and want to perform certain tasks, and that's what we want Medtrics to be. We often talk about Medtrics sort of becoming more and more invisible, the fact that there's less obstacles and that physicians and, trainees and everybody can spend more time on learning and, practicing medicine and not learning the software per se. And we feel like those type of advances are really going to be the way of the future in that way.
That's a really great point. I mean, you've said it many times, the system is very comprehensive. It's very complex. So even though you've done great work from a UX UI perspective, there's a lot of buttons there because there's a lot of capabilities right there. And what I hear you saying is you want to get to the point that, yeah, there's a lot of buttons there, but at a certain point, we probably know the button that person wants to use right now. So let's just let them use that one button and then go on about their day, right?
Perfect. Yeah. Great analogy. Exactly.
Well, folks, this has been so much fun talking to Mike Crook. He's a good friend of mine. Oh, and by the way, when we're not talking about medical education software, Mike and I are both big Phillies fans, so we talk about that. We're having a great year this year. Mike, like everyone on the Medtrics team, he is all over AI, and he's doing a great job using Lovable, Cursor, and who knows, whatever comes down the pipe next. Mike, thanks for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Awesome, Marcus. Thanks for having me.